Right, yeah. So I'm in no hurry. Well, one thing I could say is that this level, for example, the water level, is very technological suddenly, right? There are submarines and underwater like science stations and all sorts of weird propellers and levers and pumps and things like that. The previous areas weren't this technological. In fact, the third area, Monkey Mall, was the first area where electricity seemed to have been introduced, right? We have the jungle, which seems to be untouched, except for a few little gardening touches. Then we have... But again, I think that those gardening touches are necessary for game design, so that the first area, I think, represents untouched jungle. Second area, Sky High, we see a few early types of houses and temples, old, ruined ones. Third area, downtown, we have electricity. So, let's say what we would usually consider to be modern technology begins to be introduced. But in a very light way, because there are just, you know, a few little neon signs, some pumps and stuff in the area design, and so on. So that the electricity that has been introduced in that area is not being fully used. Here, though, this is the area after Monkey Mall, things just escalate completely in terms of technology, right? It just becomes extremely technological. Like, there's a huge advance in terms of that. And it kind of weirdly suggests something to me. You know, let's remember that the extra stages in all of the modes are space stations, which maybe we could consider like the pinnacle of the technological complexity in this game, are the space stations near Saturn. So that the game is showing us some sort of a transition from untouched nature in the jungle up towards extremely touched nature in the space station. And so that, I think, also speaks to the idea of masculinity. And I want to sort of make it clear here that I'm not trying to make unnecessary value judgments on all this. I'm sure that some of them are going to come through, but it's not that I'm like hiding them and don't want to share them. It's just that I don't know. I want to sort of explore these topics for myself as I'm looking at them, so that, you know, there are all sorts of value judgments that could be made here as to like whether something is good or bad, or, you know, what does it mean to develop technology, and most importantly, the thing that I'm sort of implying through my analysis, I suppose, is that I think that there is a way in which the obsession with technological progress seems to be a masculine sort of thing. And I want to say two things about that. First of all, I don't know whether that is good or bad. I don't think it is either in any absolute sense. Secondly, when I'm using the word masculine, I don't mean men exclusively. I mean masculinity more in the in the alchemical sense of a certain active orientation instead of a passive orientation. So a doing instead of a being, right? A passive orientation could be like meditation or something like that. In one of its states, at least, right? Meditation, being. And then active could be doing, and therefore I think technology in the sense of you're doing stuff to manipulate the material world to your will somehow, right? I think that might be a good definition. That the active is the attempt to manipulate the material world in accordance to your will, right? So, for example, if you want to create a dam in a river, you put some rocks and you make the river do what you want it to do. And that has its uses, it has its use. And then a passive disposition would be, instead of making the material world adapt to your will, it would be making your will adapt to the material world. So, for example, not getting the river to do what you wanted to do, but getting yourself to do what the river wants to do with you. So just letting yourself be taken away by the river, right? So the will of the river is exerting itself onto your will, and in the active sense, your will is being exerted onto the river. So that's sort of what I mean, and I think that those dispositions, we all have them in different ways and at different times. So it's not that some people are active and some people are passive and so on, and especially not that that men are active and women are passive. So I'm not saying that I don't think that is true. However, the imagery used in these kinds of games does fit in accordance to that. And again, I don't even know if that's a good or a bad thing necessarily. I don't know, like that there is some way in which historically men have been associated to the active orientation and women to the passive one, right? So that seems to be how a lot of these games and media present this. Again, in the case of like Super Mario and games like that, it's very clear that Peach is the damsel in distress. Peach is in a completely passive sort of position in the game, and Mario is the active hero who saves the day. And in cases like that, especially in the overabundance of cases like that simplify things to that extent, because of course art and mythology have the capacity to simplify and abstract things to that extent, then I would be, comfortable saying that I find something bad about that, because it doesn't represent the richness of human experience. However, at the same time, you can also probably make an analysis of history where, despite perceiving that inadequacy of this association between men and the active and women in the passive, for whatever reasons, there seems to be an association that has perpetuated itself throughout history, and that therefore it appears again and again as an image in the collective unconscious. And so, I think that precisely in order to, let's say, in order to better allow people to express themselves without being locked into these binary definitions, in order to solve the problems caused by these kinds of binary definitions, I think that it might be good to seriously look at them, to study them, to take them seriously as objects of study, to see, why are they here? Why do these images in the collective unconscious exist? What are they trying to say? I think that then there is the possibility of these images showing themselves to have been, again, mythological images, and to, once the individual, whoever it is, sees the mythological value of one's inner collective unconscious archetypes, it may become easier to integrate those that we are repressing and reject those that we are being imposed to accept, or something like that. And so, in the context of Super Monkey Ball, I think that's important, because I feel that something is being said here about technology and the active orientation, which I think is being associated in this game to Ai and Gon Gon as male monkeys. Again, regardless of what that means in the long run.